right, hi guys. I've had a closed reading to do on Emily Dickinson's I Felt a Funeral in My Brain, and I want to take you along with me and teach you how to do it and show you how to do one in case you ever have to do one. I titled it When Thought Becomes Ceremony, Dickinson's Exploration of Inner Death. And first, we're going to read the poem. Me and my daughter went through a discussion on how to say poem, but I'm from Tennessee, so it's a poem. And I'm going to read it to you, and then we'll break it down. I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading, till it seemed that sense was breaking through. And when they were all seated, a service like a drum kept beating, till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul. With those same boots of lead again, then space began to toll. As all the heavens were a bell, and being but an ear, and I and silence some strange race wrecked solitary here. And then a plank in reason broke, and I dropped down, and hit a world at every plunge, and finished knowing then. All right, so we got our poem down. Well, the first thing we're going to go do is break it down and find the understanding. And when you do a closed reading, it's about how you feel, what you understand about a poem. So my understanding is, and I felt a funeral in my brain. Emily Dickinson compares the speaker's feelings to a funeral happening inside her head. The funeral symbolizes vast and overwhelming emotions that are complex. The mourners, the drum, and the coffin in the poem express how these thoughts intensify and become more distressing over time. As the poem progresses, the speaker feels as though they are losing control and becoming increasingly confused. The ending illustrates how overwhelming it can feel when someone's thoughts become too heavy and they are unsure what to do. The first thing I noticed, let me back up. So we went to the understanding. We understand what it's about. She feels trapped in her head. She feels trapped in her mind. Her mind's racing. She's got anxiety, thoughts. Now we're going to go to what I noticed, or if you were writing it, it would be what you notice. The first thing I noticed is how the poem and Dickinson's writing resemble Poe's writing and expressiveness. It is very gothic, alluring, and frightening. All rolled into one. I also feel claustrophobic reading it and saying it out loud. I scrolled too far. I can hear Dickinson's heart beating, which again reminds me of Poe's The Telltale Heart. The capitalization of certain words to make them stand out and to emphasize their importance is also something to mention. And you have to remember back whenever she wrote this, which I should have looked this up before I started this, but I didn't. This was just on a whim. I think it was like the 1800s when she wrote it. It was around Poe's time, which was probably in the 1800s, but their typewriters did not have italics, so they would use capitalization to express the emotion and the feeling in the words. Dickinson's emotional words suggest the idea of entrapment or confinement. The funeral symbolism expresses the speaker's inner emotion. The funeral is not real, it is happening in their minds. The symbolism makes me feel like the narrator is manic or experiencing psychosis. And when I read the poem, and I read it 1,000 times by now, that is what I feel like. The rhythm, such as the drum and treading, gives us the feeling that actions surrounding the narrator are becoming louder and extremely complex. As the poem progresses, the speaker seems to rapidly spiral out of control. It exhibits how someone trying to cope with mental health issues or trauma can quickly deteriorate. Another theme that Dickinson may have wanted to express in this poem is the confinement and loneliness associated with dementia, Alzheimer's, or addiction. I feel as if Dickinson may have also included subtle hints of unaliving, I don't want to say it on here, or unaliving tendencies in the poem. But the one thing that stood out to me the most was the resemblance to Poe and the Telltale Heart. Even the explanation of the drum, the beating heart, the rhythm, Poe says the same thing in that poem. Now we have to go to explaining. We went to understanding and the noticing, what you notice about the poem. So next we're going to go to explaining. So I'm going to explain it line by line. In the poem, I Felt a Funeral in My Brain, Emily Dickinson compares the narrator's feelings to a funeral happening inside their head. The funeral is not real. It shows that the speaker feels incredibly sad, confused, and overwhelmed. In the first two lines of the poem, the speaker feels like something unfortunate is happening mentally, establishing the mood for the rest of the poem. Dickinson use of the words mourners expresses the sad thoughts walking back and forth. In lines 3 and 4, sad thoughts keep going repeatedly. It feels like these thoughts are pressing down so heavily that the speaker can no longer think clearly. In lines 5 and 6, the thoughts seem to settle down, and then the sound starts again. So we have to explain line by line, or at least every 2 lines, how you interpret it. It feels like these thoughts are pressing down so heavily that the speaker can no longer think clearly. This is baby. She made me lose my train of thought. Sorry. It feels like these thoughts are pressing down so heavily that the speaker can no longer think clearly. In lines 5 and 6, the thoughts seem to settle down and then the sound starts. The drum beats steadily, like the speaker's sad thoughts repeating endlessly. In lines 7 and 8, the thoughts keep going and do not stop. The speaker starts to feel numb, tired, and unable to control their feelings. In lines 9 and 10, the box is like a coffin. In this poem, the coffin represents the speaker's mind or feelings. It is like part of the speaker being taken away or buried. In lines 11 and 12, the boots of lead show that everything feels very heavy. The speaker feels weighed down in lines 13 and 14. The word space rings like a bell, evoking the speaker's sense of emptiness and loneliness. Everything feels too loud and overwhelming. The speaker feels like they are able to hear the noise and cannot think or escape. In lines 15 and 16, the speaker feels very alone. They feel confused and secluded, like they are trapped. And then a plank in reason broke, line 17, tells us that this is a moment when the speaker's mind can no longer handle the pressure, meaning that there is reason, which their ability is to think normally, eventually breaks. In lines 18 and 19, the speaker feels like they are falling deeper into confusion or sadness. It is like falling down a spiral staircase in your mind. And finished, knowing, then, expresses how this verse suddenly ends the poem. The narrator loses all understanding and control. This illustrates the frightening and overwhelming nature of the experience. And that's all I have. But thank you for listening. I thought I would help anyone that needs help. I am an English major with a minor in literary studies. So I hope this helps you, and this has helped me because now I can go explain it better, and maybe it'll help me better in my class. Thank you.